Hi, and welcome to L.I.P.I Presents Ghost News Network. Today is a special episode. We've always said in the past how we have all this equipment and all these things that we utilize in the field. Well, today, when we tell you that we have more equipment than anyone in the country or the world, we mean it. And today we're going to take you on a tour and show you everything that we have so that you know all the things that we use here at L.I.P.I Paranormal Investigators.
My name is Mike. I am the founder of L.I.P.I Paranormal Investigators, and I'm just going to take you through all the different types of audio devices that we use. Starting off, when we first started back in 2003, we started off with audio cassette recorders, and this is just a variety of different audio cassette recorders. Some record normal mode, you can change it to fast mode and slow motion as well. Then we get into the more newer technology, which is all your digital recorders. We base on usually Olympus is what we majority use. Then you go into ITC devices, something kind of newer in the paranormal field, which is the Ovilus 4. We have PSP7 spirit boxes. We use an Echo Vox, and then we have these other two recorders with this little thing plugged in called the germanium diode, scans AM and FM frequencies. And we go into all of our different walkie-talkies. Yes, we use them for communication purposes, but we also use them for possible contact with the other side. We have gotten some interesting evidence through our walkies years ago, and we keep using them. So yeah.
Alright, so now we have the different types of photography that we used. And when we first started, we were using old school 35mm film. We were using film all the time, developing it. It became a little bit of an expensive thing and obsolete as time has gone on. So then we switched to our regular digital point and shoot cameras. Then as time went on, we started to upgrade and move on, and we have different types of cameras that detect different filters of light. So we have a full spectrum camera that detects all spectrums of light. We also have an infrared camera that detects photos in the infrared spectrum of light. We have a black and white camera. The reason why we utilize black and white cameras is because whenever you have shadow people and claims of shadow people being seen, with black and white, because it enhances the black shadows and the black lines so much, it will help us see the shadow person even better. We also have a FLIR thermal imaging digital camera, which takes picture of surface temperature. And then we get into our SLR cameras. These are our more higher ranged, more high tolerance cameras. So, but they're also in the same thing. We have full spectrum, we have IR, we have a UV camera, we have point and shoot. All those cameras that we utilize to try and capture any kind of spirits, because we don't know if when a spirit's manifesting, what wavelength of light it's appearing in. So we utilize these cameras to hopefully increase our chances of seeing a spirit through our cameras. We also have our infrared lights that we use in conjunction with our different cameras, like our IR and our full spectrum, and that's just to help enhance our range and distance that we can take our photos with. We also have motion sensor IR cameras. These are our trail cams that we utilize. This way it's equipment that works for us when we're not out in the field. If something were to move by and set that thing off, it should capture a photo of it. It's great to have pieces of equipment that work whenever you're not in there. We also have things like the GS2 laser grid set up. This sets up a big grid pattern, kind of like old grid paper, so that if there's any movement, you'll see on the screen which direction it's coming from and the temperature and shape. And it'll also give you an idea of the distance that it's from. We also have the Class 2M laser, which does the same thing, but it's a crosshair. And everything you're just looking for is any kind of break in the line that's going to show you that the height and the movement that the spirit is moving in. We also have the geophones that we utilize. Geophones are used for the purpose of any kind of vibrational frequencies. So you have claims of something moving around, hearing creaking in the house, sounds of footsteps. You really want to set these things up so that you can capture those footsteps. And obviously you want to have a camera set up with it to record that. We also use plenty of different motion sensors. We have the standard motion sensor here that lights up if anything were to cross in the pathway and break the sensor. And we also have an old school one back there that we've been using since we started, and that one has a receiver. What's great about that is you set up the green motion sensor somewhere and you take that receiver with you, and if something were to set that off, and let's say you have it in front of a DVR camera or something, that receiver will then go off and you'll know that in that closed off room something set that off. So you can go over to there right away and check. With these, if you're not in that room and it goes off, you're not going to necessarily know until you're watching DVR. But with that, you'll know right away when you're having activity. We also have laser pens that we use. These are doing the same thing as kind of the GS2 laser grid, where you get a grid pattern and you try to capture any type of activity or breaks in the light that you want to capture.
Then we go into the theory of static electricity. When a ghost manifests, give some type of static electric charge. We have a couple different types of static meters. These are called static pods. Anytime that something close that gives off a static electric charge, these lights will light up blue. We have a bunch of those. Then you go into the meters, static meters. There's a digital and an analog one. We try to cover all bases with, analog, digital, anything we could possibly get. So we have two different types of static meters. Then up top we have our strobe light. And in theory, what happens basically with that is you're looking for more of fast objects or fast-moving things that will slow down. In strobe light, when you have the setting on medium, what will happen is if, say, a shadow person runs down a hallway and you have that thing going, it should slow down that movement visually, and you're able to capture it on camera. Then we have a laser projector. It's a simple projector that's used during Christmas time to light everything up. Same concept as the GS2 laser grid and the Class 2M laser. It gives off a whole projected of lights, all dots on the wall, and same concept. If something moves, you'll get speed and height of how big the object is that cuts the beams. Then you go into the REM pod, and that's basically kind of like a, if EMF is interrupted, that'll go off, it'll light up and make sounds. The HGO proximity sensor is more of like a trigger and control object. You hook it up to a device, and if something touches it, it'll go off. We have our PMBs, which is your paranormal music box. Basically, they're motion sensor orientated, so if something breaks the beam, it plays music, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
And then we also got multiple types of flashlights, obviously to help us see in the dark, but we also have a couple flashlights up here, which are UV flashlights. And they produce a UV light because we don't know what spectrum of light a spirit might manifest, so if it manifests in the UV spectrum, that'd help us see it. And we also have these flashlights, which you may have seen. Those are for the flashlight experiment, which we have debunked. And just multiple different types of flashlights that we use throughout the investigation, not for everybody. And then we have our video systems. So we've got multiple DVR cameras that also shoot in IR. Let us see in the dark. Also, if we can't be in the room there, those guys act almost like an extra person so that they're watching rooms that we might not necessarily been in for activity, as well as looking at the stationary equipment that Mike was showing you before. And we have multiple different types of handheld videos. We've got our full spectrum HDD, we've got IR, video cameras, and those are just that we have something in our hands while we're walking around during the investigation. We also use them to date our investigations as well as make start and end times, and just so we have a good record of what our investigations are, what their dates are, if we caught anything or not. And then we have a variety of our EMF meters. We use a multitude of different types of EMF meters. You never know, they all detect things at different frequencies, so maybe a cell sensor might detect something that a K2 doesn't, but we've got our cell sensors. We've got our two tri-fields, our natural tri-field, which is only detecting natural EMF, and our regular tri-field, which also detects man-made EMF, and the K2s that everyone has seen. And yeah, and then we got our energy loss meters.
I'll jump into that. Energy loss meters, that's actually a device that I kind of created. It's something as simple as a voltage meter. You hear about a lot of people going into these haunted locations with the camera, and full battery charge, within 5 minutes it's dead. So, and there was never any way to detect that. So what I did was I created what's called the energy loss meter. It's a simple meter that detects 0 to 15 volts, hooked up to a 9-volt battery. And basically, when you turn it on, it should read 9 volts. And if you're out, say, for an hour, and then all of a sudden, what we're basically looking for is a sudden drain on that battery. So if it's reading 9 and all of a sudden it drops down to like 2, that's something to look at. There's nothing that can draw on any of these meters. There's no power source. Or you also can look at fluctuations of what we call the Bermuda Triangle theory. When you have an area that you hit of high EMF, all of a sudden your needle might start having erratic movement, going back and forth. That's also something that we're looking at with these meters, something that we cannot fake. So
we also have all of our different temperature meters that we use, and we use surface temperature thermometers. We use ambient temperature thermometers. Difference between ambient is the air in front of you. That air is what you're going to want. So if you have a hot or a cold spot in front of you, you can literally just stick the meter in and get a reading. With the surface temperature thermometer, if there is that air in front of you, because we're not sure of the density of the reading of the infrared on it, it might shoot right past it and you might not notice. But you have claims, like in Gettysburg, where somebody had claim where they saw somebody walk through a wall and go into another room. And you want to use the surface temperature thermometer to try and pick up that kind of temperature difference. Because whenever they investigated that location in Gettysburg, they found out that there used to be an old door that was there, and it was just a residual thing that walked around. We also have what's called a temp data logger. This also detects ambient temperature thermometer. You set the alarms for what you want it to go on. In this case, we consider a hot or a cold spot anything higher than 10 or minus 10 degrees from whatever our base is. So if it's 75, 85 would be considered a hot spot, 65 would be considered a cold spot. We also have our barometers. There have been plenty of times where people say they feel like a whoosh or a sudden drop in pressure. That is what this detects. We use this to try and keep an eye on what the pressure is around us. We know that where we live here, it's typically between 1020 and 1030 millibars. So we want to know if we have any kind of sudden drop. And we consider that 20 degrees or increase in pressure. So we also have a carbon monoxide meter. Carbon monoxide, we use this for our clients. This is when we go into a home and we are going through, doing our base readings and checking out to make sure that the client is in a home that's safe. We use this so that we can make sure that there's no carbon monoxide, because you get a lot of side effects from carbon monoxide poisoning, like hallucinations, like paranoia, fear, all these things that happen. So we use this to make sure that the homeowners are safe. We also have a UV meter. This detects the UV spectrum. This should only read UV if you're out really in the sunlight. So if you're in night and you're doing an investigation, you're holding that button down, and you get a sudden spike, that could be a spirit that is giving off some kind of UV. If you notice, we use a lot of different types of variations of UV meters here. We also have our air ion counter. We use this to just track all of the ions in the air. We don't know if a spirit manifesting may cause some kind of reaction in positive or negative ions, so we utilize that in order to track it. We also have all of our radio frequency meters. These are the electrosmogs that we use. We also have the zap checkers. These also detect radio frequencies. Now with the increase of technology and wireless routers and things like that, if they can utilize EMF, what's to say that they can't utilize some form of radio frequency in order to manifest? That's why it's important to use these things. As technology advances, you need to advance with it, because we don't know with these new creations of frequencies of energy if a spirit's going to utilize that. We also use different types of Geiger counters. We have old school civil defense Geiger counters that we utilize. We have DX2. This detects gamma radiation and beta radiation. That one detects gamma radiation. We also have this, which detects microwave radiation. We also have this is a digital Geiger counter. This right here is our IM179 Geiger counter, and that detects detects gamma radiation as well. So these are the different types of tools that we utilize. Oh, we also have our wind meter. Sorry, it's a lot. You get a little overstimulated here. We also have our wind meters. You always hear clients talk about how they'll have a sudden gust that'll come past their house and something will kick up or something in the hallway. So we use a wind meter to try and capture any of that type of activity.
And like we said in the past, we are one of the groups that does take in the scientific and spiritual aspect into it and combine both. We have psychics in our group. We use them in a very scientific way. A lot of this stuff that you see here is stuff that we use to do cleansings. That's, like I said, where you take the science of it and you throw it out the window. If we do go into someone's house and we capture evidence and they say, hey, we want it out of here, we have to try to help that client and clear it out. And this is some of the different stuff that we use, different types of sages, stones, and a lot of the stones are used in the cleansings as well as forms of protection for our investigators. If we know we're going into a location where is a little bit on the intense side, we might have some people carry different types of stones, and some stones, black onyx for instance, will ward away evil types of energy. There's also different types of salt. We have the Dead Sea salt, black salt, that stuff we use during cleansings as well. The candles, you know, all your typical cleansing type stuff. Dowsing rods is something that we also use. We used it quite a few times on our investigations to try to test them out and see what they do, what it's all about. They have worked in the past for us. Like I said, when you're scientific, you take something like that and you try to make it as scientific as possible. So when using these things, you know, you've got to make sure your hands are very steady and doing stuff like that. So it's hard. It's hard to keep them steady, to not make them cross, because they're made to spin around. That's the whole purpose of them. So, you know, I can sit here and spin my hand around. You don't even see my hand really moving. So we take it and kind of put it on a scientific level. When we were investigating a location, somebody built this device where you stick your rods in like a plank of wood, and they're steady, and you walk away. And there was a level built into it, which was really cool, so you could see as it's leveled. And now all of a sudden, if you start seeing those rods move across, that's something to look at, and that's stuff that we try to do when we're using these things. So, yeah, this is everything.
Yeah.
So,
thank you guys for joining us on this tour of our equipment. We appreciate it. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. What's your favorite type of equipment? Doesn't have to necessarily be a piece, but do you like EMF meters, audio, Geiger counters? Let us know in the comment section below. Or do you like saging? Let us know. We'd love to hear about it. So yeah, thank you for joining us, and until next time, take care, guys.
have a good one.